Metacrafting, Recombinators, Redeemer Slams. These were the techniques chosen to craft the perfect Blade Vortex sceptres. But the Exile realized there was a cheap way to finish the suffixes. Veiled Chaos Orbs. Thus, the super buff sceptres were born! Hey Exiles, Chronic Painless here with the Week 4 update to my Blade Vortex League Starter Guide for patch 3.18. I've been getting a lot of questions on stream about how I crafted my sceptres, and the short answer is Recombinators. Recombinators are obviously a very powerful crafting tool and happen to be really useful for making sceptres like these. Plus, I've actually discovered a new way to finish the suffixes that's even more cost effective than the one I used. Of course, it took more than just Recombinator spam and blind luck to make these sceptres. So I'm going to go over all the techniques that I used to craft these nearly mirror tier weapons. The first crafting technique we're going to use before we even get to Recombinators is the Cannot Roll Caster modifiers Metacraft and Annulment orbs. The interesting thing about this combination is that when you put Cannot Roll Caster on an item, Annulment orbs will never remove mods tagged caster. So this means that although it could remove the Metacrafted mod itself, it will never remove the Ducati's mod from this scepter. So if we want to clean up these prefixes, it's as easy as that. Now that we know how to clean up our prefixes, let's talk about Recombinators. The best resource for understanding recombination is this guide that was posted to Reddit. This is the Bible when it comes to Recombinators. These guys put in a ton of work and collected an unbelievable amount of data, and I have to say, abiding by their tenets has saved me a ton of time and currency in crafting my scepters. The most important thing to understand is the fact that the number of mods you put in the pool affects the likelihood of the number of mods that will be on your final item. Prefixes and suffixes are determined entirely separately, so while we're crafting the prefixes for our recombinated scepters, the only thing we care about is how many mods we have and how many are possible on the final item. This is because of a technique that he calls doubling mods. Doubling mods means having the same mod on both items that you're recombinating, and you can do this either for mods that you want to keep or for mods that you don't want to keep. And we're going to be making use of both of these during the crafting process for these scepters. So the first recombination technique we're going to be using is actually doubling mods that we don't want to keep. Because of the Cannot Roll Caster Annul trick, we can safely use mods like added maximum mana to increase the number of modifiers in our recombination pool and not risk adding a mod that is going to be hard to remove later. The more mods we have in our pool, the higher our chances of keeping a high number of prefixes, and the higher those chances, the higher the chances of keeping the ones that we want. So I'm going to even go as far as to craft maximum mana on this other scepter, bringing our total mod pool to 4, giving us a 35% chance of having 3 prefixes on our final recombinated item. Now because there's really only 3 possible prefixes that it can have, if we hit that 35% chance, we'll see both of the mods that we want, plus an easily removable maximum mana. Doesn't matter that one of them's crafted, since both can't be on the final item, and even the uncrafted mod can be easily removed with Cannot Roll Casters and Annuls. In this case, we got lucky and the Recombinator removed it for us. Okay, so for the final phase of the recombination, we've got 2 of the mods we want on each of these scepters. We've got our +1 Ducatis, we've got our +1/+1, so now we're going to put them together with a 35% chance of keeping all 3. And it's just that easy. Now that we've got our prefixes all set, it's time to lock them and reforge our suffixes. When I made my scepters, I made the mistake of using Harvest crit reforges to chase global crit strike multi. However, if you use Veiled Chaos Orbs, you actually have a much higher chance of getting just as good of a mod. And to increase that chance of success even further, we're going to use a technique known as Unveil Blocking. This means adding a bench crafted mod after we add the veiled modifier, but before we unveil it. All veiled mods also have a crafted version, and both of them can't be on the same item. So, if we bench craft a mod before we unveil, we can't unveil the same mod we just crafted. So before we do our unveil, we're going to craft the mod that removes the most weight from the unveiling pool. Looking at Path of Exile, you might think that the highest individually weighted mod, triggering a socketed spell when using a skill, is the one to choose. However, if you look closer, you'll see that these three mods are actually linked. So, the damage per charge mods can't be shared on the same item. Crafting one of these effectively removes 3,000 weight from the pool as opposed to just 1,500. Here's what that looks like in practice. We have the veiled mod and no other mods, so we're going to craft damage per power charge. This will remove 3,000 weight from the pool since we can't unveil this mod or endurance or frenzy charge damage. Instead, we get crit strike multiplier while a rare or unique enemy is nearby, which is pretty much all the time. So now we're almost done. We're going to bring back our old friend cannot roll caster modifiers for the Redeemer Slam. We're going to do this because we don't want to get either of the caster tagged mods when we hit this Redeemer orb. Even though a chance for our spells to do double damage would be nice, the increased cast speed is so bad and the hatred effect is so good that it's definitely worth it to use this metacraft before we hit the Redeemer Slam. So let's see what happens. And unfortunately, we didn't get hatred effect, but this is still a very, very nice scepter. Now, of course, the very last step is adding back the crafted modifier that we actually want, Global Crit Strike Multiplier. That does it for the crafting video. Hopefully you have more luck on your Redeemer Slam than I did and get that mirror tier scepter that you deserve. I'll be back next week with even more tips on your Blade Vortex. So as always, stay painless.